Farm Tales, Chapter 1. The wind howled around the creaky, century-old barn. Its ancient bones groaned over years of neglect, as it worked hard to keep itself together in the heart of the winter storm brewing around it. Muffled voices joined the mayhem from behind the two-part door holding the elements at bay. The contents of the hay-covered interior ruffled their feathers, clucking their excitement over the meal they knew was just a moment away. The top of the door swung open as an exceptionally violent gust shoved its way through. The feathered friends leapt into a frenzy. Fat little bodies collided, sending feathers and hay into the air in their effort to outrun the frigid nemesis disrupting their peaceful nesting.
"Oh, Marta, I told you to be careful. The wind is awful," the first little voice squeaked. "I didn't mean to. It pulled right out of my hands,"
the other complained as two bundled bodies slipped through the small opening in the bottom half of the barn door.
"Hurry, they're freaking out. We don't want them to crack the eggs. Mom will be pissed."
Together they pushed into the door until the latch clicked.
"Oof!"
Marta let out an exasperated sigh as she sank to the floor. The barn suddenly felt quiet, without the wind bouncing from wall to wall.
"Mom would be more pissed if she knew you were using that word,"
she smiled slyly.
"Oh yeah? You just said it. If you tell, I tell."
Her sister punched her softly in the arm, standing up and holding out a hand to help Marta up.
"Ouch, Tess, don't do that,"
Marta grunted as she lifted off the ground and flew to her feet.
"You don't have to pull so hard. Remember what happened last time?"
"Then grow a little, shrimp," Tess teased. Marta pursed her lips into a plump pout.
"Come on, we don't have time for that. Put that lip back before something poops on it. Let's get the eggs and get out of here. We still have a ton of chores to do,"
Tess prompted as she moved to the first set of nesting boxes. Marta looked around the arena. After the outburst had calmed, most of the hens had made their way back to their preferred spots. The child nodded resolutely and made her way to the side room. The heat lamp warmed her face as she drew near and crossed over the knee-high barrier standing between the back room and the main chicken coop.
"Hey, chickens!"
Her happy burst was met with a chorus of clucking.
"I'm sorry for this. I know you've been working hard. Thank you for the eggs, though. We really like them. They are the best breakfast ever."
She moved to the first nesting box. A tubby, peppered, speckled hen blinked out at Marta, ruffling her feathers as she drew near to collect their bounty.
"And did you know eggs are what you put into pumpkin pie to make it fluffy and stuff? My mom just taught me that the other day. So, thank you for the pies. I'll save you some in the slop so you can see for yourself. It's really yummy."
Tess peeked through the door, smiling ear to ear at her little sister.
"Are you still talking to them, Squirt? Don't you think it's a little weird to offer them egg dishes, Marty?"
Marta froze with her hand outstretched. Her eyes bulged at the thought. Gradually, her shock faded into annoyance. She frowned and slowly looked over her shoulder toward Tessie's cheeky grin.
"Do you have to ruin everything for me?"
she complained.
If you thought a little bit, I wouldn't have to. You could ruin it just fine for yourself." "Ugh, shouldn't you be doing your side?"
Marta cried, sparking a flurry of clucking from the unsettled hens behind her.
"I'm sorry,"
she cooed, turning back to the speckled hen.
"Sisters,"
she grumbled. The little hen fluffed up protectively as Marta reached gently underneath her.
"Ouch! Pepper! Ow! Ouch! That's not nice."
Before she could finish, the peppered hen followed her warning peck with two more of increasing strength.
Okay, I know. Ouch! But I have to do this. I wouldn't if it was my choice. I'd let you keep them.
She placed her bucket on the ground and used her free hand to stroke the chicken comfortingly. Marta did feel bad each time she collected their eggs, even though she knew it was part of the cycle. They fed the chickens, and the chickens fed them. But all logic aside, she couldn't help but imagine herself as the chicken. It only seemed natural that they would protect the eggs. The hen calmed at her loving touch and watched her with wide, beady eyes. The cluck radiating from the chicken was more like a growl, long, low, and not happy. Marta drew out 5 eggs, one at a time, placing them carefully into the bucket. Each one varied in shade, from white to brown. Once she'd finished, she moved on to the next box. This chicken was bright orange, with a funny crown on its head.
Good morning, Jemima. How many do you have this morning?
This one put up less of a fight. As soon as Marta reached beneath her, she struggled and flapped her way from the box and waddle ran to the barrier. The funny creature hopped over and disappeared into the next room. Marta laughed aloud, gathering the eggs from the now unoccupied box with ease, as she pictured the irony of what she'd just witnessed. All at once, the joke became clear to her. She hopped up and down in her excitement, nearly cracking the last of the eggs as she rushed to peek over the barrier.
Hey, Tess,
she squealed. What, Squirt? Tess called over her shoulder, back still turned to her little sister as she continued to go about her business.
Why did the chicken cross the road?
Marta was now bobbing up and down on her toes with excitement, waiting her sister's response. Tess groaned. Ugh, not again. She rolled her eyes, back still turned to her little sister. Okay, why?
To get away from me.
Marta burst into laughter before she'd even finished the sentence. Tess couldn't contain her chuckle. That's not even a joke.
Well, you didn't see what just happened.
Marta was crying from laughing so hard as she imagined the scene that had just played perfectly into the age-old question. She wiped her eyes and trotted back to her bucket, picking it up and moving it slightly to the right as she made her way along the wall.
Bob, did you have any luck this time?
Bubby was a black hen with freckles on her chest. She was the oldest of the chickens, the mother of the hen house. Marta reached under the hen, feeling around the warm hay. She frowned. Nothing. It had been a week since she'd produced any eggs.
What's going on, Mama?
Marta pet the hen's back, suddenly feeling sad. The noises coming from Bubby sounded like a lament. Marta stepped back, realizing something. Bubby had been around as long as they'd had chickens, and never once, since Marta had known her, had she been allowed to keep her eggs. What if it was too late? What if she couldn't make them anymore? Tears welled up from her precious little heart. Marta looked down at the bucket with a dozen or more treasures resting at the bottom. Then she looked back at the motherly hen. After a moment of pondering, she brightened and reached down for the contents, one at a time stuffing them under the hen.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 should do it.
She patted the hen on the exposed part of her back.
Shh! We'll keep it our little secret.
Marta put her finger up to her lips.
Are you almost done over there?
My bucket's almost full, Tessie yelled from the other room.
Almost. I only have 4 more.
Geez, you take forever.
Hey, they're really pecky today,
Marta countered defensively. Yeah, probably because of that horrible joke you told. Marta rushed through the final boxes, collecting a dozen more eggs. She turned to exit and stopped in front of Bubby to pat her on the head. The little chicken cooed and clucked contentedly.
"Okay, don't tell the others,"
she whispered. "Don't tell 'em what?" Tessa had peeped through the opening and was watching her little sister with a raised eyebrow. Marta nearly leapt from her skin.
"Geez, you scared me. Don't sneak up on me like that."
Tess watched her, still waiting for an answer. "Well, don't tell them what?" she asked again.
"Well, just that she's my favorite, that's all."
"Well, now you did it. You just told all of them anyway, so secret's out." Marta stuck out her tongue. "Okay, hurry up, Squirt. I need your bucket when you're done talking to the chickens. Let's finish this. My fingers are freezing off." Tessa turned to leave and spun back around. "Hey, hold on. Are you sure you got all of them?" She glanced suspiciously around the small room. "You're not getting lazy on me, are you?"
"Yes, I checked them all,"
Marta cried out, as if insulted her sister would think that of her. She hoped the burning in her cheeks would be taken as an effect from the cold, as she picked up the bucket and made her way to the barrier. "Here, give me that, so you don't bust them climbing over again." Marta handed over the pail and made her way to the other side. Together they finished up the chores, fed and watered the animals in both barns, and braved the cold back to the house. For the next 3 weeks, Marta guarded her secret carefully. She was the first to throw on her boots and rush to the barn each morning. Though the smaller pen had always been her responsibility, she was increasingly protective of the area as time passed, to the point Tess might have been suspicious if it had been the first time her sister had acted strangely. As it was, it wasn't. Over time, Marta moved the heat lamp closer to the soon-to-be mother hen's box. She also snuck a kitchen bowl out to the hen's house in her heavy jacket and turned it into a personal food dish, which she left tucked under the nesting boxes. One crisp morning, as the 2 girls entered into the chicken pen, excitement filled the small back room.
"Geez, what's their problem today?"
Tess complained.
"I hope the neighbor's dog didn't keep them up last night."
With a burst of excitement, Marta rushed to the barrier. Her eyes glittered with joy.
"Tess, come see,"
she squealed. Tess followed after.
"Whoa!"
In the center of the orange glow of the heat lamp were 4 tiny chicks. 3 little yellow balls of fluff and 1 little black puff.
"What the heck, Marta?"
Tess looked accusatorily at her sister.
"Is this why you've been acting like such a little weirdo?" "I wasn't being a weirdo,"
Marta defended.
"But look, they're babies."
Bubby watched protectively. She cocked her head toward the 2, looking at them with her closest beady eye.
"Bubby!"
Marta glowed with pride.
"Bubby, you did so good. I knew you'd be a natural mama."
"Marty, you know we have to tell Mom and Dad about this. They'll want to take the chicks into the kiddie pool with some hay and lamps until they grow up a little."
"No!"
Marta leapt up.
"No, please, let's wait for a day. Bubby hasn't been laying eggs, Tess. I think she can't anymore, so—"
Marta's cheeks went red as her sister put her hands resolutely on her hips.
"So I took eggs from the other chickens,"
she said quietly, as if trying to keep the swap a secret from the other biddies. "Marty, the other chickens don't care. They can't understand you."
"Yes, they can,"
she argued, glaring defiantly at her sister.
"Just because you don't think so doesn't mean that's the way it is."
"Don't be silly, Marta." Tess shook her head. Marta looked back over her shoulder at the mother hen pecking at the hay around the circle of chicks.
Look how happy she is. Look what a good mommy she is, Tessie. Please, don't take them away yet.
She glanced back at her sister desperately.
Please just give her another day with them, she begged.
Tessie dropped her hands at her sides, resigned to the will of a child on a mission.
Okay, fine, but if we get in trouble, this one is on you. I won't protect you this time, Marta.
Marta held out a pinky.
Deal.
Tess laughed and hooked a pinky of her own. They shook on it.
All right, Marshmallow, let's get this done.
Marta leapt over the barrier and headed toward the first nesting box. Tess watched her sister for a moment as she walked carefully and maybe a little too close in a half circle around the little newcomers.
Marta, don't touch them, or Bubby won't take care of them.
Marta threw her hands up cautiously, causing the mother hen to cluck a croaky warning and huddle in closer to her chicks.
Okay, sorry, Bubs. I'll leave you guys alone.
With that, the girls went about their business. Before they left the barn, Tess took a final look at the small, heated room. A sense of foreboding tugged at her tummy. She glanced back at her little sister, skipping in circles just outside the main barn door on her way to the house. With a final sigh, she closed the door and followed after. The following day was unseasonably warm, as Marta sprinted ahead toward the massive gray and white giant housing her secret. Tess trailed behind, taking in the frosted grass. It was already melting into tiny dewdrops. The rising sun left an orange glow draped over the fields. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The air was fresh. It smelled like wet grass and hay. The contrast of the fresh air to the aromas of breakfast and the wood-burning stove they had left behind made her head spin. She opened her eyes and followed in her sister's tiny boot prints. When she reached the heavy double door, she picked up her speed. Marta was sobbing.
Marty, are you okay?
She rushed through the entrance and stopped short. Her little sister was knelt on the ground, hunched over, her shoulders squeezed in around themselves, heaving heavily.
Marta?
Tess didn't have to look to know what had happened. She hopped over the barrier and made her way to Marta's side, placing a comforting and protective hand on her shoulder.
Marty, is it the chicks?
Marta hiccuped and gasped, looking up at her sister with mournful, unseeing eyes. She held out her little gloved hands, cupped lovingly around a little black bundle of fuzz. Tess knelt down beside her and held out her hands.
May I?
She asked softly. Marta squeezed the little bundle close to her heart before nodding slowly and extending it to her sister. Tessa took a closer look at the stiff, lifeless body of the petite chick. It looked as though he'd been trampled. Poor thing, she thought. She looked at Marta, trying to think of what to say to console her. In the end, she simply placed her hand on Marta's shaking shoulder when nothing came to mind. For a moment, they sat together in silence.
Did you pick out a name for him?
Tessa asked, finally. Marta nodded, sniffling. She had picked up a blade of hay and was stirring the bedding around in front of her. Tessa waited quietly, still holding the precious little parcel.
Pickles,
Marta murmured. Tess offered a small smile.
Marta, do you want to bury him? We can say some nice things and give him a proper burial.
Marta looked at her sister with watery eyes and nodded. Marta, we need to tell Mom and Dad about the others so the same thing doesn't happen to them. She held the little bundle out to her sister and stood up. Tess placed a hand on Marta's shoulder comfortingly while awaiting her response. Finally, Marta sniffled and offered another slight nod. With that, Tess took off her coat and made her way to the far corner where Bubs was huddled over the remaining 3 chicks. Tessa carefully collected them, under protest from the mother hen, placing them gently into her jacket. Once they were all where they needed to be, she wrapped the corners of her coat into a basket of sorts and made her way back to Marta. Come on, Marty. Let's get them situated so we can finish this stuff and bury Pickles. Marta stood shakily, still holding the petite chick. She walked the fluffy parcel to the nesting boxes, placing him gently on top. I'm sorry. We'll be right back, Pickles, I promise. Marta wiped her eyes and nose on the back of her glove and followed Tessa from the barn.